Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Paula C., Jen L., Mike P., and Gordon S. On the program today is a returning guest. Mr. Alex Black is back with us. Alex is the executive chairman of Rio2 Limited, a gold-focused project developer that is advancing the Fenix gold project in the Atacama region, northern Chile, to construction. Rio2 is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol RIO, as well as on the US OTC markets under the symbol RIOFF. Alex, it's great to have you back on the program.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to be back after a hiatus of about 18 months, but it's good to be able to say we're back on track again.
Absolutely. No, it's good to have you back, Alex. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. You're definitely one of our favorite guests, and it's a pleasure to have you back and good to hear your voice. Well, why don't we jump right to recent news that the prior EIA decision for the Phoenix Gold project has been overturned to a positive approval of the EIA after the appeal process. Congratulations on that. And for our new audience here who is not familiar with Rio2, I'd like to just have you talk about this, go back to the chain of events, back to the work period that happened on the initial study and the application that went into the original EIA application, then the decline that happened, appeal process, and now the overturning of that previous decision. Can you just walk us through that and give us your thoughts on how this has gone and where you guys are today?
Yeah, okay. So with regards to the EIA process, we acquired the Phoenix Gold project in mid 2018. At that time, the project had no benchmark, all the preparatory work you've got to do for an EIA anyway, didn't have it, the baseline study. So we had to initiate the baseline study. We then prepared an EIA and we filed that. We went through this with the authorities. It's done at the regional level, so at the Atacama region level. We went through 3 iterations of observations, etc., with the various authorities during the process of the EIA. We filed it towards the beginning of 2022, and it came up for review in April of 2022. April 2022 was 3 months into the new Boric government. And how do I describe the Boric government? Well, very inexperienced government, communist leaning. President Boric is a stated communist from the point of view of his leanings. And the government was made up of very inexperienced politicians, inexperienced business people at the bottom line, and they wanted to make their mark on Chile. And one of the things they wanted to do was change the constitution, et cetera, et cetera. So there we were in April of 2022 with a regional process where we had ticked all the boxes and we were expecting to be approved to allow us to go into construction in about August or September of 2022. Unfortunately, we got a negative decision on our EIA and it did not get approved. And that was a shocking decision because it just came out of left field, considering we had all the feedback, the 3 observation periods that we answered, all the various observations that had come up. But what happened was that the environmental body in the Atacama region decided to consult the federal guys about the fact that they were going to approve this project. And the federal guys came up with an excuse for that not to happen and put pressure on the regional guys to disapprove the EIA. So it was clearly government interference in a process that we had done by the book. I mean, everything we did was by the book. because we were stopped at that point, which was April, or which was mid 2022, that the final verdict came through about the project being disapproved. We the we had the only process we could follow was to go into an appeal process and appeal the result. And that appeal process was with a committee of ministers. So 7 different ministries, including the Ministry of Environment, to review our appeal. And now our appeal, which went for an 18-month period, it was ridiculously long, and it should never have been that long. But there is no specified timing for the hearing of these appeals. That's the problem. It went for 18 months, and during that 18-month period, all we did was go to the various ministries, not to the ministers, but to the technical support teams of the ministers, to demonstrate that we did nothing wrong. The federal government had decided that we were going to make some significant impact on chinchillas in the area. We had identified chinchillas. Nobody knew there were chinchillas in the area. We identified that there were chinchillas in the area, but not in the project area. To the west of the project area is a valley, which is outside the project area where we found chinchillas, which is sort of typical for that region. Our building of this mine is between 4,600 meters and 4,900 meters above sea level. What we observed was there were no chinchillas at those altitudes, and that makes a lot of sense because of the fact that there's no vegetation at those altitudes. It's very inhospitable, and no chinchillas in that area. We went back to our findings. We did lots of uh, groundwork on the chinchillas during our EIA. We reiterated all that work. We did more than what we were obliged to do. And at the end of the day, this committee of ministers meeting was unknown to us when it was going to be heard, and we were coming to the end of 2023. It was 18 months, and we still had no indication that the meeting was our case was going to be heard. So we put as much pressure on, particularly the Minister of Mining, who's very pro mining, and she's a seasoned. She's a second appointee to that position, and she's a seasoned veteran of the mining industry. We lobbied her and said, "Look, we have to get this thing going, and we need a result." So they pushed us through, and they had a meeting in mid-December, 20th of December, and we were on the slate for that meeting. And what happened at the meeting? We were approved. The decision was turned around. So we were able to convince this group of 7 ministers to understand our case and to approve it. Now, we didn't have to do anything special. We didn't have to do any more work on the ground during that 18-month period. All we did was reiterate all the work that we'd done. And the other thing that was strange was this project was not held up socially. From a social community perspective, everybody wanted this project to go ahead. This project wasn't held up from a business perspective. We were going to employ 1,200 people to build this project. There was lots of businesses in the Atacama region, particularly around Copiapó. And so, we had a lot of things for this project that, were in our favor. So we were finally able to get that decision through. The problem is that 18-month period where we were stopped, there's been significant damage done to the company. Our share price, even though we now have stated that we are approved, has not recovered to the levels that it was at the time that we were stopped back in mid 2022. Now we've got to pick up the pieces and move the project forward as best as we can. But hopefully that covers exactly what we had to go through in getting this case approved. Typically, what happens in Chile is that if you have an EIA approved, it can be challenged. And typically it's challenged socially, or it's challenged technically from an environmental perspective, etc., by third parties. In our case, it wasn't the case. We had no objections. The objection came from the government, and we challenged that decision. It was a completely different style of appeal as opposed to what typically happens in Chile. Anyway, we're past that point, and we're now moving the project forward.
So this was more or less a political motivation, if you will, of certain
It was
parties to.
it was entirely political, and I'm not worried about saying this. I mean, we were interfered with by the federal government of Chile, who started off with an anti-mining, an environmental ideology which was off the charts. And I've got to say, they've been in power for 2 years. They've only got 2 years left because it's a 4-year term. They can't run again. But during that 2-year period, the first 2 years, their move to get the constitution changed failed twice. And so there's no constitutional change in Chile. Their attempt to change the tax system in Chile failed. And so they've been put on the back foot. And also, what's happened during that 2-year period is Chile's gone into negative GDP. They are in trouble right now. And now the government's making all this rhetoric about, stimulating the economy and being pro-business and all this sort of stuff. I mean, they've got the tails between their legs, and they've been chastised by the country for taking them on this ride of nothing for 2 years. And
Right.
unfortunately, we were a part of that ride,
Hmm.
and so that's what's happened in Chile.
Yeah, these governments tend to not know what's best, do they? They just seem to be a bit of a clown show, and the lunacy spreads beyond just Chile. We're seeing lunacy play out in other places as well, Ecuador, Panama. As far as mining goes, I'm talking just mining specifically. And I just challenge people to try the anti-mining approach and see where that takes you. If that happens on a global basis, we've got some bigger problems to worry about.
Yeah, I've always said that the key to any mining project anywhere in the world, and there's three keys, and I say it's social, 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 which means you need to get social license for what you're doing on the ground wherever you are. And we had that. What comes out of left field is when governments, like in the case of Panama, interfere in the process and then try and change the rules, and that's what we're seeing in LATAM. But we have seen in the last few years this move to the extreme left, but now we're seeing this move to the extreme right with what's happened in Argentina with Milei being appointed president, who's on the extreme right of things. I think you're going to see this wave happen through the rest of LATAM over the next few years, where people realize that communism doesn't work, um, and it kills countries, and so they're going to move politics further to the right. Now, in the case of Chile, I'm assuming that given what we're seeing in Chile, Chile will probably move to the centre right in the next election. Probably not to the extreme right, but certainly to the centre right, and that's where it's been. It's been sort of centre right, centre left over the last 20 years, and the country's worked, and it's been a powerhouse economy of LATAM. But once people feel downtrodden, and then they go for the leftists or either extreme of politics, the wheels start to get wobbly.
And we're seeing also with some of these events, we're seeing outside interference into these countries, which is a whole nother
Yeah.
can of worms that we don't have time to go into, Alex. But we're certainly seeing outside interference from groups that are very well funded, interfering with even the sovereignty of some of these nations. And it's just it's one of the sickest things I've seen. But we'll stop at that point and move on here and stay focused on the company.
Yeah.
With the sentiment, you talked about the share, the value destruction of this company with respect to the rejection and the overturning, and we saw a little bit of recovery here, but it goes right into the next point, which is the junior sector for gold generally still is in the toilet for sentiment and valuation. Talk broadly just about that sentiment in the junior sector here, and any thoughts for the audience as far as how you see 2024 going here. And of course, we know Rio2 specific that, execution on the ground at this point will start to demonstrate that value return. But just talk about the junior segment as far as just overall sentiment right now for the gold
Yeah, well, I
juniors.
think I think we're a good example. I mean, when we got stopped essentially back in the first half of 2022, the junior world was different then. I mean, it wasn't good, but it was much better than it is today. And we were on our path to financing this project and getting this project built, and construction started in the latter part of 2022. When you look at where the junior sector is today, it's completely different. What's changed is inflation's gone through the roof, so costs have gone through the roof. The cost of financing has gone through the roof. I mean, back in early 2022, the interest rates were near zero. They're now near 7%. There's a different world out there. The other thing that's happened is that there's been some disasters in the junior sector with companies like Pure Gold and Heart Gold, with their ventures that they got into in a good jurisdiction in Canada, where they blew their companies up, and also uh, pulled some banks with them in respect to financings that were done for their projects. So there's been a lot of bad will, the history of Argonaut, who had some disasters financially, etc. Um, you're seeing Barrick now, showing that they still make a lot of money, but costs are going up, significantly at Barrick. Newmont, the disaster of the the Newcrest acquisition, all that feeds into the whole sector, and particularly the junior sector, because the first place to run away from is the juniors, if you want to not be in the sector. So a lot of changes have happened in the last 18 months to 2 years, and yeah, the market's sick. I mean, it's sick. It's very difficult. Here we are. We've got a project with remaining capex of 135 million US. That is not a lot of money when it comes to capex for starting any type of resource project. two
Yeah.
years ago, that was easily doable. You might as well put another zero on the end of that because it's like you're going to have to raise 1.3 billion dollars because it's that difficult when you look at the market. So we've got remaining capex of 135 million. If you look at the Wheaton stream and the 50% of the stream proceeds that we haven't pulled upon because that was subject to EIA approval, that's 25 million. That takes it down to about 110 million. We're going to have finance 110 million dollars for this project. And that's like Mount Everest. That's like climbing Mount Everest at this stage for us as a junior company, because obviously we have to find some banks or lenders that are willing to lend a proportion of that money. But the remaining portion, which I don't know what percentage it could be, but let's say it's 30% or 40%. That's 30 to 40 million US that we have to find maybe in the equity markets. I mean, I don't know where that's going to come from. I just don't know where it's going to come from because uh, the markets aren't as transparent as they used to be from the point of view of knowing where potential funding could come from. So lots of things have changed. And being an exploration company in this market is almost not worth it, right? We're not an exploration company, we're a developer. And you can see how difficult it is for us. But I can't imagine having an exploration company which is going out drilling holes and trying to find deposits of whatever materials. There's no money out there. The retail sector is drying up. The institutional segment has long gone, and the institutional segment is a lot smaller than what it was 10 to 20 years ago. So yeah, it's tough. And we're competing against stuff. What are we competing against? We're competing against people that can just own gold and not take any risks with the developers or the producers. People that can invest in ETFs, so they invest in a broad basket of companies and not in individual companies. Then you've got the fact that you've got Bitcoin out there. That's starting to ramp up with the ETF, etc. So there's the technology sector, which is still a big drawer of investment funds. The Dow and the S&P are still charging ahead at sort of record levels. So we've got a lot of competition when you say, okay, I'm going to build a gold project in Chile to find the money for that. It's incredible. It's really incredible at this stage. I've never
Yeah.
seen it before. I've been in the business 40 years, and I'm navigating stuff that I've never seen before.
To add on what you said, you've got these, I think it was Endeavor,
Corporate governance disaster, that one.
disaster
Yeah,
for sure. But that, as you said, all this plays into the whole sector and
exactly.
makes
Exactly.
everybody look like clowns for sure. So on the money, I want to stay on the money for a moment because you brought up that part of it. Talk about what you see as the rough time frame. I know you can't give specifics here because we're talking about raising capital, but what do you see on time frame here to help piece that package together and get this project going? And I guess we can kind of couple that with schedule, Alex. Why don't we just talk about that for a moment? And then if you
Well,
want, why don't you go ahead and bring the capital structure into this as well?
the good thing is, well, if there is a good thing, the good thing is that we are here in January. We are planning to build this project during the summer season in Chile, right? Now, we're in the middle of the summer season right now. It's the opposite to the Northern Hemisphere. And we're in the middle of the summer season now. So the earliest we can build this project is September, or start to build this project is September. The reason we need the summer is because we're going to be doing quite a bit of earthworks for our plant and our leach pad. The plant will have concrete slab put down, so will the truck workshop, etc. You need, good climate to be able to cure the concrete, etc. And you don't want to be doing that in the middle of winter. So that that means that we've got between now and September to finance ourselves. So that's not a bad, that's an 8 month window of time. And so what we're doing now is we're working with Endeavour Financial, who are our financial advisors. And now that we have got approval, we're going to be going out to various financiers, banks, funds, um, private equity funds, et cetera, to see what the appetite is to get behind this project. So that will happen over the next month or so. Over the last 18 months since we got stopped, we've had independent engineers, independent to ourselves, and who are working for the banks, um, do a review of the project. Um, we've ticked all the boxes. There's nothing untoward in respect to their analysis of the project. So that's all been done, which is good because any of the financiers can latch onto that independent engineer and seek their advice as to what they're seeing as in regards to what we're saying we're going to do with this project. So we have to find out how we're going to finance the project. And right now, today, I don't know how it's going to be financed. As you've seen in the past with some development projects, a strategic investor comes in, whether it's a mining company or a big fund. They take an equity position. They also get involved in some of the debt, and et cetera, et cetera. That could happen to us, but I can tell you right now, there's nothing prescribed in respect to how we're going to finance this project. Right now, we've got about 250 million shares on issue. I think fully diluted, it's about 290 million shares. The dilution there is mainly related to options. Um, Most of them are out of the money anyway. So it's a sub $300 million share capital. Our market valuation right now, I mean, yesterday I think we popped down to nearly 30 cents. So 30 cents by, we're a 75 million Canadian market cap. Let's call it 60 million US at this stage, just a bit more than 60 million US. Maybe we're going to have to go out and get some sort of equity, 20, who knows, $1 million worth of equity. That's doable for a company our size. Obviously, it means, involves dilution, but it's doable. But really, at the end of the day, I'm going to be very pragmatic about this. I'm not going to finance this thing just for the sake of financing it. I mean, we're going to have to look at the cost of capital and make sure we get a sensible deal given the context of the market to finance this project and to accept financing this project. So that's the pragmatism of us and myself and our board is that we need to see that in the next few months. Does that answer all your questions that you had there?
Yeah, Alex, I think that covers it, and I guess it brings in the other point there with the Wheaton deal as to when you can draw that down, and does that provide a little bit of a buffer in the meantime where you piece off maybe at various stages the rest of the package, or what are you thinking there on sequence?
No, I mean, originally we were on a fast track, and I'm talking about back in early 2022. We were on a fast track to construction. Now we're not. Pulling down on that $25 million from Wheaton, yes, that's part of the financing package, but we're not in any hurry to pull that down. The trigger for that is the EIA approval, which we've got. There has to be a resolution um, passed in relation to that EIA approval. That takes a month or so to get drafted and tabled. There's no problem there. It's just a bureaucratic process. And once they see that, they will be in a position to advance us $25 million. We also need to sit down with Wheaton now that all this delay has been put behind us, because in the original streaming agreement, we were due to deliver gold to Wheaton in 2024. Here we are, and we don't have a mine. So we need to review the terms of the streaming agreement and adjust it to fit our new schedule for the development of this project. So if we do get this project financed by September of this year, we'll start construction in September. We've got a 14-month uh, timetable for completion of construction, and so that puts us in production in about August of next year, 2025. That's our current timetable if all goes well. The build of the project is relatively simple. The beautiful thing about this project, it's gold oxide, run of mine, heap leach. The plant is very simple. It's just pipes, tanks, pumps. There's no crushing, there's no milling, um, and uh, the material is blown up in situ, put into trucks, and taken to the leach plant and reticulated with cyanide. It's a very simple process. So the construction of that is very simple. I mean, if you're going to build a mine, maybe an iron ore mine is even similar, apart from the beneficiation plant. But this is very simple. So that's one thing that's going for us is the simplicity of this project. And we've done this twice before in building two similar projects in Peru over the last 12 years or so. So
Right.
we know what we're doing. We're ready to go once we've got the money, and I think the path to production will be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, I think so, Alex. I think it's a very simple project, and we have a team that has done it in the past, so that's a very good positive as well. I think we have a good gauge. So with pre-construction activities, of which some of that work happened in 2022, prior to obviously this delay,
Yep.
you're still looking at 14 months, which actually is fairly quick. That's a pretty quick build, to be honest.
Yep.
So I think everything's lining up pretty well here, just as far as kind of looking at the timing here. Other stuff here, I guess it brings in, I mean, obviously someone's going to ask this in the audience, but it brings in some of the other questions about the general strategy here of moving forward here, getting this startup and commissioning done, successful ramp up, commercial production. And I know we have expansion to go down the road here as well for this project, because this project has notable expansion that can happen. But talk to the audience, if you will, about the bigger picture here for Rio2 in terms of overall strategy to expand beyond this project for Rio2, or is an M&A transaction in the cards in the future should there be interested parties? Alex, how do you see the final strategy and bigger picture for this company working out post successful stage one, if you will?
This company can go it alone. I mean, we can get stage one up and running ourselves, and obviously we can um, look at partially funding stage two with cash flow, etc., from the mining operations that we're going to be bringing on stream. Um, uh, we're a good example of being a one asset company. I mean, we had this issue come out of left field that stopped the company, And because we didn't have any other assets in our portfolio, we had nothing else to do. So obviously our share price went down to 10 cents, and, we were valued at $30 million at that stage, or 25 million dollars. So it was quite a surprise, but it was a good example of one asset companies. And there's plenty of one asset companies out there. We've been looking at M&A since we started Rio2, which was in 2016. We did an M&A deal to get Phoenix Gold in 2018, but we've been looking at lots of things ever since that time, and nothing's happened. And you know, um, some of the things we've been looking at haven't been worth doing anything with. But then again, others where there are, a sort of corporate transactions to be done, it's, we come across entrenched management who, for whatever reason, just don't want to do a deal, right? Because they want to know what they're going to be doing if we take over as management, blah, 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 right? So this sector is sad from that perspective, because there's just too many companies, and there should be a lot of M&A in this sector. And I think there's more than 1,500 companies listed in the venture exchange and the TSX and in the resource sector. That probably should be healthier at maybe less than 500, but that takes a lot of M&A, and still today I'm seeing companies doing spin outs and forming another company out of assets they've got on board. I just shake my head at all that. I think, why create more companies? I mean, but a lot of guys in the junior sector do this because they're pulling a check, right? So if they can
Sure.
sit on 3 or 4 boards, they can pull a check from those 3 or 4 boards. They can earn quite a decent living. Um, they're not worried about what the shareholders or the value of the company is happening, because they just go to the
Right.
market every few months and go and raise some more money. $2 million here, $3 million there, pay the bills, pay their salaries, etc. So yeah, I'd love to do M&A in the sector. And will we do M&A? We're looking at things right now as I'm talking to you, but will they eventuate into anything? I don't know. And as
Right.
I say, it takes two to tango. But I think this sector deserves M&A, and I would like to be a part of it. I don't know how. I can tell you, no big companies have looked at us, which is surprising for me, because there's only four gold producers in Chile. There's ourselves coming on stream. There's Goldfields with Salares Norte. There's Pan American Silver, who acquired all the Amana assets, and there's Kinross. That's the
Right.
that's the gold mining sector in Chile, and none of those guys have looked at us. None of those guys
Yeah,
have spoken to us. None of the guys have shown any interest in what we're doing. Very interesting to me. Just silent running. It's just interesting from that perspective.
covered a lot of good stuff there. I mean, this junior sector is ripe with dirt bags and scum, whatever you want to call it. I mean, for sure, it's quite a clown show is out there, as you and I both know. With respect to some of the suitors, it sounds like you guys are open to M&A transactions being taken over. Obviously, there's probably a question of valuation for that transaction to occur, but certainly there's a handful of companies that come to my mind, which I'll leave unspoken for the podcast here. But man, there's a couple that could certainly do with a simple project like this, and this project fits in really well with some of the models out there. And for them not to be looking at this at the trough here is a little bit surprising to me, but nonetheless,
A lot of people will err on the. They'll wait and see whether we deliver, right? Execute and
right,
deliver, and that's fine. The eyes didn't come onto Rio Alto, our previous company, until we bought our second operation, which was Shawindo. We put La Reina into production. We built the company up to a market valuation of about $600 million. We then acquired Saladin with Shawindo. That was a creative transaction, built the valuation of the company up to nearly 900 million, and then we were taken out for $1.2 billion by Tahoe Resources. I mean, I don't expect Rio2 to see any M&A transactions with anybody big, but I'd like to do M&A transactions with companies of our size who have got interesting assets that maybe, you know, pipeline projects to us bringing Fenix on stream and then us um, rolling on into whatever asset they bring to the table, so that we see ourselves grow our production profile over time. Phoenix Gold starts off at 100,000 ounces a year, more or less, of production with trucked water to site. It does that at an AISC of about $1,250 an ounce. This project can be expanded with piped water from Copiapó, likely to be desal water, to a size of 250 to 300,000 ounces a year. It becomes a world-class project when it gets to that sort of level. To start
Right.
with, it's relatively small. So then we start to appear on the radar screens of some of the bigger guys when we get to that sort of level.
Yeah.
So I don't see any activity with bigger guys until we show that and we can demonstrate that we can expand the project to that sort of production level. Today in the junior sector, doing M&A with other junior companies makes a lot of sense to me. And once again, we've just not been successful at pulling anything off to date.
Well, there'll be a different conversation once stage one is in the books here and
Exactly,
everything is
exactly.
steady state, smooth running. So, yeah, we'll wait and see what happens there, Alex. I appreciate your thoughts on some of that stuff. Well, just for the sake of time here, let's get close to wrapping up here. I just wanted to ask one other question here, just with any comments that you have, comments on the community front, government relations now post EIA reversal, and just overall Chile in the future for being a continuing destination for mining.
Oh, I mean, I had that question asked of me recently, is Chile open for business in mining? And certainly it is, right? I mean, we went through an experience that I hope nobody else goes through, and we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? That's our situation. But Chile is open for business. Uh, it will become, I think it will return to the powerhouse that it was from a copper perspective and maybe from, lithium and other gold, etc. In the future. So yeah, I mean, Chile's a good place to do business. This government will be done in 2 years, and it cannot run again. So there'll be a new government, which I think will be centrist, either left or right. I'm not sure in the future. So there's no problems there. The other part of the question was, as I said right at the beginning of this presentation, social, social, social. And I can tell you that we've done everything right from the beginning when we started the EIA process to get on board and to get our community support for this project. And we impact six indigenous communities in the region that we are going to build this mine. And we have 6 agreements in place. They, during this 18-month process, have been supporting us and lobbying for us to get this project up and running. So we don't have any issues from a community perspective. From a business perspective, we're going to employ 1,200 people in the construction phase of this project, and then about 500 odd people during the operation of this project. That's going to impact service companies in the region. The Atacama region, as a region itself in Chile, has one of the highest unemployment levels of any of the regions of the country. So us coming on stream is going to be a positive contribution to business and to the communities in that region.
Alex, well, thanks for the time here. Let's leave it there for now. For potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about 80 million Canadian dollars. Why should Rio2 be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio at this point?
We've got a clear path to construction and production, um, given us being able to finance this project. So once again, I talked about the ease of the project, the simplicity of the project. That's something that everybody has to understand. We have a gold oxide run of mine heap leach project. We don't produce tailings. We have a locked circuit. Um, the water and solution just gets recirculated through the whole system, through the leach pad, back through the plant, back through the leach pad, back through the plant, etc., etc. So it's a very simple process. And the other thing that people need to understand is we've done this before. We're not just a junior that's building their first mine in a country that we don't live in. No, this is something that we've done twice before. The two mines that we built before are still in production, La Arena and Shahuindo. Both belong to Pan American Silver, and they're still going. So there's the testament to what we can do, what our knowledge base is, and the same team that built those two projects is with Rio2 and is going to execute and deliver with Phoenix Gold.
And Alex, what is the best way for folks to contact the company?
I'm very happy for people to contact me directly, and I'll give you my email address. It's alex.black@rio2.com. And I'm happy to take emails from any shareholder at any level, whether they're a small time holder or a large holder, or and willing to answer questions. So I'm an open book. The company's an open book. We're as transparent as we can be, and so that's the best way of contacting us. We don't rely on IR. The executive chairman will answer questions directly.
Alex, thank you for that. Always good to catch up. Keep up the work here, and I'm looking forward to chatting again soon this year. Keep up the efforts, and thank you again for the time.
And Andrew, thanks for this. And obviously, we could have chatted more about lots of things. You know, I'm on a tight time schedule at the moment today, but happy to come back when we've got something more to talk about and maybe elaborate on some of the other interesting things in general that are going on in the sector.